Sean McLaughlin. Really happy to have him this afternoon. Sean, former player of mine. Really proud of him. He's done an incredible job. Played at Georgia. Friday night starter at Georgia as a freshman?
Yes.
I like to tell that. I tell that people, they're like, nah, that's not true. Friday night starter as a freshman at Georgia, now in the Braves organization. And I can tell you from my own personal opinion, just an absolutely incredible player. Saw it firsthand, had the ability to take over a game. More of a bulldog mentality, not to Georgia Bulldogs, but just did an incredible job of wanting the ball and a passion for the game. So as he goes, I'll tell a little bit of his background, gets professionally, gets to a place where he's got good stuff, but for some odd reason, he just can't break through that barrier to kind of get to be the top prospect, be on the verge of the big leagues, and that kind of takes to a little bit of where we're at now. And I'll turn it over to Sean. Really proud and happy to have Sean McLaughlin.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of playing for Chance when I was 16. I did not make the Astros, and I was a little mad, and then I ended up playing for Chance, and we got to kick their butt a couple times, which was really cool. But yeah, I ended up playing at University of Georgia. I played outfield there and pitched. I didn't want to give up the bat. I always thought of myself more as a hitter than a pitcher. And then finally, draft started calling, and they kind of told me what I was. It's really easy to be a pitcher when you're throwing 97. When you're hitting 240, it makes your decision a little easier. As I got going in my professional career, everybody kind of hits a point in a roadblock in their career where they have to make some decisions and some adjustments in their game. For me, that happened in 2018 when I got up to AA. I got by on velocity my whole life. It was really good quality to have, and it didn't catch up to me until AA. I got up there in 96, 97, started turning into doubles, triples, home runs, and I couldn't really understand why. My whole life I was willing to right by people, and all of a sudden now I wasn't. And it was the same guys I played with the year before. I couldn't really put a finger on what was wrong. As you've seen, the game has kind of turned into a really analytical game. Teams like the Dodgers, the Rays, the Yankees, Red Sox are getting really into this, and for good reason, because they have billions of dollars at stake, and they're winning world titles because of this. Once I started asking questions, kind of, why am I getting hit now? Why can people hit 97? I started finding more answers. I thought I had really good stuff because I threw 96. Then I found out that I was extremely average in just about every other aspect of pitch analytics. Unfortunately for pitchers, we get boiled down to one number, and that's usually velocity. When in reality, there's about 14 to 18 different numbers that we can track now. We have data to prove what works and what doesn't. And that goes all the way down to a varsity level, all the way up to Major League Baseball. So for me, the biggest thing I had was velocity. The other things I was dead average. So I was at a point in my career, if I didn't fix these, I was going to be stuck in AA for the rest of my career until it was over. Lucky for me, I got with some really cool people, some really smart guys. They kind of taught me all this stuff, and that's where I've kind of started today. Obviously, our season in the minor leagues got canceled, so I started my own analytics company trying to help players that are hitting similar roadblocks that I am. Now, this roadblock could happen. Some guys it happens to them in the big leagues. Sometimes it happens to me in AA. Some guys it's college. Some guys it's just they can't make their high school team. And all these numbers are really confusing at times, and there's a lot of information, but this is stuff that can apply to really any baseball player. So I'm going to kind of go through a few things and kind of what is happening in the game today in terms of the recruiting development side, and then I'll open up for questions because, again, this is really high-level stuff, and I've tried to dumb it down as much as possible, but it's still a lot of information, so I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions at the end. In terms of recruiting, we've seen that now everything has gone virtual. I had the luxury of working for a company called Baseball Cloud. I was a liaison between about 20 college baseball pitching coaches and Baseball Cloud, kind of teaching them the analytical side and how they can recruit based off this. Pretty much every school is having to go towards data and video. There's no in-person recruiting until April 15th. People are relying all over Twitter, all over video from coaches. They're trying to get Rapsodo, TrackMan reports, everything they can, because now that there's data out there, they can compare you to anybody in the country, really. You can compare a kid from California and Florida and see how their fastballs are similar and different. College coaches can now also compare you to their current players. So now, once they have the data on you, they can say, how does he rank up against my Sunday starter? How does he rank up against my Friday starter? What is his progression looking like when he's 15, 16, 17, 18, right? We always look at just velocity, like, oh, he was 15 years old, he was 82. Now 18 years old, he's 86, that's really cool. We can see him go up. Now the same thing is able to be done with Rapsodo and TrackMan and stuff like that, where you can say, here's what his curveball was at 15. Now look at it at 17, or vice versa. It hasn't gotten any better from 15 to 17. I think I was throwing about as hard as I could when I was throwing it with Chance. I didn't really start throwing much harder. I was one of those guys, I was 94, and yeah, still 94, right? Now, what I could have done is done some of this Rapsodo work, some of this spin rate stuff, and I could have said, hey, but my velocity hasn't gone up that high. Now look at my curveball spin rate. Look at my changeup movement, right? It just helps us show progression to these college scouts, because what they want to see is that you're getting better, because they don't want the kid to stay stagnant. As this has gone virtual, it's becoming more and more important to get yourself out there on getting yourself with the data, getting yourself video, getting on Twitter, getting emails out to coaches, because they can't see you anymore. And they're having to rely on these trusted technologies to kind of do the eye test for them. They can't be all places at once, and all this analytical stuff allows you to get yourself out there in a way you couldn't before. All right, so what are they looking for? Like I said, when I worked for Baseball Cloud during over quarantine, I talked to over 25 SEC, ACC, Big 12 pitching coaches, and the main things that they were looking at were these. Velocity is still king. They still want to see you throw hard. It makes everything better. It makes your off-speed pitches better. It makes hitters decide quicker. It's still king. But what we're finding out is it's not like the only thing, right? If you're a guy that is stuck at 85, 86, 83, are you just because you can't get your velocity up doesn't mean you have to all of a sudden stop playing, or that you have to limit yourself to a school that only can recruit guys that are 83 to 86. What you can do is you can say, hey, my fastball is only 83, 86, but check out the movement on it now. Check out my off-speed pitch, because this off-speed pitch could be SEC caliber, but your fastball says it's not. Now, what you can do there is throw a lot of off-speed. You can be the crafty lefty, right? We all know that kid that goes out and shoves every time, and he's a little lefty, he's throwing 82, 83, and you're like, how is he getting everybody out? We now have data to pretty much show how he is doing it. It's a lot of times it's with spinner, a lot of times it's with deception, with movement, with location, right? We're just getting better at putting numbers to this data to be able to show what our eyes are seeing. The two other things, so velocity and spin rate. What spin rate does, it allows us to move the baseball. It's not a death sentence if you don't have good spin rate. It just means that you're going to be capped. You're going to be capped in terms of like a hitter's exit velocity, right? If you don't hit it very hard, it's going to be hard to hit home runs. Same thing with pitching. If you have a low spin rate, you're just going to be able to make the ball move less. Not always a bad thing, but we want to see high spin rate numbers, because that way you can get with a coach, and the coach can then teach you the proper way to spin a baseball, teach you the proper way to get around it to maximize that spin rate. Then pitch movement. Obviously, we always want to make the ball move. We always see that on video, except it's really hard to get. We don't have those big TV cameras like the MLB where you can see exactly what your ball is doing. Now with all this technology, we can actually show you to the decimal place how far that pitch is moving. And then once you compare that to your current college staff or major league pitcher, you get a better reference on how these pitches move and what they look like. You can now show a coach basically what your pitching fingerprint is. And the more information they have about you, the easier their decision is to go to the head coach and say, hey, this guy's got this, 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 and this. Now the velocity's not quite there, but I can work with that. We can work with the strength staff. That's his job, right? So it just makes it easier, because this is what they're looking for. I have a release point extension, approach angle. Those are three other numbers that some schools look at, some don't. It's just less important. But these are the three main things you want to focus on if you want to be recruited as a pitcher. For hitters, we've seen the exit velocity, launch angle thing happening in the big leagues, and these are kind of what, when I polled all these college coaches, I said, what are you guys looking for? Main thing, approach. They want to see approach. What are you swinging at? Are you looking to do damage? Are you looking to swing the right pitches in the right counts? Are you looking to move runners over? All these things are still extremely valuable. For hitters, data is less readily available. We really have a couple things that you can look at, which makes these other things very important, right? Pitching, we kind of know. Hitting, it's still up in the air. The things that we look for in terms of data for hitting is bat speed, exit velocity, and I want to say not launch angle, because I think that's the biggest misconception in what's going on right now. A coach's job is to get players with potential into their program, and then they develop them. Launch angle is a development skill. I can tell you to go hit the ball higher or lower. It's really hard for me to say, hey, go hit that ball 10 miles an hour hard. So what they are looking for is guys that can control the bat, have a good approach, have a good exit velocity that shows power. Then once you get on campus, then they go to the launch angle discussion based off of what your exit velocity is, what is your approach, what's your bat control, right? We don't want to ever focus on hitting a bunch of fly balls if we don't have the exit velocity, which I know is happening a ton in the amateur game right now. We're flying out more than we ever have because we simply don't have the exit velocity. We don't have the strength. A lot of us haven't hit puberty. All that comes later. So when you hear these broadcasts in terms of Major League Baseball, all that stuff, it's like, yes, those guys are maxed out. They're producing top-end exit velocities. They should hit fly balls. Right now, most of you guys should not. You guys should be focusing on getting line drives at the middle, hitting the baseball hard. Then once you mature, we get into that as more of an advanced approach. So what college coaches are looking for is still those things right up there, as well as the exit velocity, but just don't focus as much on the launch angle because every single guy I talk to, not one number about launch angle was brought up. All those things were, not one thing about launch angle. So if you're focused on fly balls, it's just really not, it's not going to help you out much. And then they're just going to see you fly out and they don't even really care about that much. So those are things to keep into for hitters. What affects pitch movement? These are some terms that are going around right now that I'm sure you'll see on Twitter, certain coaches, if you're looking at Rapsodo, stuff like this. A couple of things I want to go over with these because these are really the only things you need to focus on if you're getting into this. Spin rate, again, it gives us the capacity for more movement. The more spin we have, the better we can make the ball move. Spin efficiency is how much of that spin that we're generating is actually applying to the baseball. So certain pitches, such as a gyro slider that comes off your hand, has 0% efficiency. What you're actually doing is taking no spin and letting gravity move the ball. Now you look at all these high four-seam fastballs, we want perfect spin efficiency so that all the backspin we're generating is going towards the movement. 12-6 curveball, the opposite effect of that. We want that spin efficiency to be high so we can use these seams and the wind to create that break for us. So it all depends on what pitch you're trying to do, but that's a term that is kind of not really hit upon a lot, but that's something that really affects our movement. And spin axis is how is the ball spinning? So if we look here, the baseball will be going right here, perfectly at 12 o'clock. The more we move it down, 3 o'clock would be pure side spin. If we go 6 o'clock, it'd be pure top spin. So what that does is it tells us what part of the spin is actually aiding to the movement and how is our ball going to move based off our axis. We'll get into this in just a second. Cool, this is what I was just detailing right now. You'll see this baseball. At first, we're going to see this baseball at a 12-15 axis. This is what we would want to throw a four-seam fastball on. We want that backspin to aid in our movement. The second ball you'll see here in a second will be at a 230 axis. This will have a lot of side spin. So if we were throwing a four-seam with a side spin axis, we're not going to be able to get that rise that we really want. At the end of the video, you're going to see what I called about with spin efficiency. The ball is going to look right here, but the ball will be turned on its axis and going this way. What's going to happen there is we're not going to get the direction of the ball going towards home plate. So this is something that's really key when we are crafting these pitches. This is just a cool little example. Right, so there's it as 12-15, straight backspin right there, right? Then if we throw that same four-seam pitch, but on the wrong axis, we're going to get a lot of side spin. That ball's going to move way differently than what we wanted to before. Now once we shift the efficiency of it, you see how the ball becomes off-center. That pitch is not going to ride as much as we want it there. So these are just some examples of what is making our baseball move and some things to think about when we're throwing certain pitches. We can get into more specifics later. Here's a really cool example. You're going to see a ball in the red that is thrown on a 1 o'clock axis. This is a splitter from Cam Grosjean. He's in the major leagues. And he's working on creating more side spin because the splitter we want there to be side spin so the ball drops. Anytime we have backspin, that ball is going to stay up. So this is something good to think about when you're throwing a two-seam fastball or a changeup. You don't want a ton of backspin because what that's going to do is keep the ball to stay up. The more you shift that baseball and get side spin, the more our ball is going to move this way and down. So for him, he was throwing it on a 1 o'clock axis in the red, and on the green, he's throwing it on a 2 o'clock axis. Now, you're going to see the difference in how the backspin plays the ball versus side spin here. The red's going to have a lot of backspin and the ball will stay up. The green, coming second, you're going to see has way more side spin, and you'll see gravity take over, and the ball will start to drop. So just a really small millimeter change at the hand can lead to a couple feet of difference of break in the movement. If he throws that top one in the big leagues, Mike Trout is destroying that one. If he throws the next one, probably getting a swing and miss. Another cool thing to look at is how do we throw more strikes with all this? All these numbers can make us nastier, and it's great. We can apply them and get more swings and misses, but a big problem in terms of the amateur game is lack of consistency. We know that repeating a release point is going to lead to better results. It's really simple, but now we have a lot of data that shows this. So anytime we're repeating our release point, it's going to lead to more consistent results. One of the most important parts of repeating your release point is going to be that your ball is going to move similarly every time. So when you're aiming glove side down and you repeat your release point consistently, the ball should move the same, which that allows us, our aiming point, to kind of guide us. If we are consistently changing our arm slot, changing our axis up here and down, right, our ball is going to move differently pretty much every time. That makes it really hard to aim. So one thing getting consistent results will do is just we'll know where the ball is going to go. And anytime we know that, we can pretty much throw strikes better. So this picture right here, up in 2019, you see all those green dots in the line going right through the middle. That is a 10:30 release point. So this is a left-hander right here at 10:30. So you see the green. What that means is how the wider spread, he was going up here, he was going down here, he was changing his hand. There's a lot of error in that big spot up there. Now he only had a 37% strike percentage with his fastball that year. They told him about this. They told him how inconsistent his release point was. And down in 2020, you see the cluster gets extremely small. What this does, he went up 20%, went up to like 57% strikes percentage with his fastball here, simply by repeating it better. He knew how his pitch moved. He knew where to aim. He had consistent results with it, right? So anytime we're talking about analytics, it doesn't always have to be spin rate, all this stuff. It can be as simple as, are you repeating your delivery? And that's something that's really important for amateurs because they get caught up in spin rates and movements, and half the battle is just, can you consistently throw a pitch the same every time, right? So this is where analytics can go all the way down to a 13, 14-year-old repeating this, or even a Major League Baseball player that didn't know he was doing this. So it's not always about can we get nasty. Sometimes it's just can we stay consistent. And then again, how to get recruited in 2021. After talking to all these college coaches, now more than ever, grades are extremely important. It's just harder to get noticed because they can't come see you. So if you give them a reason to not come see you, they love it. That means one less trip for them, one less phone call to make, right? That's where grades are really important. Video, that's how everything's operating nowadays. That's how the world is operating, everything, Zoom. It's all going there. So the more video you can get out to them, the easier their job is. Data. For pitchers especially, getting on Rapsodo, getting on a TrackMan is extremely important so that they can cross-reference you to any kid they're recruiting currently and any kid on their current staff or they've had before. Consistent contact. Getting with these coaches consistently and showing them video, showing them data, showing them your progression is the best way to do it. Establish a connection. Show them the progression that you're making. And that's where getting all this data helps because you can literally show them how much better you're getting now. And lastly, is develop. They don't want to recruit bad players, right? No, my biggest, after talking to all these college coaches, find the schools you want to go and have your, wherever you want, your reach school, your solid school, and then maybe one of your backup schools, and say, what do you look for in your recruits? Because after talking to, like I said, 20, 25 pitching coaches, Most of them had about the same, but a lot of them have really unique things that they're looking for. Getting that info from them allows you to go work on the numbers that they want to see from their recruits, right? If you want to go to Georgia Tech, you need a really good four-seam fastball. That's what he's looking for now. That's not something that every college coach is looking for, but if that's your school, you better start working on that now. You better get some data in showing you have one. You better get some progression showing, saying, hey, I'm working on this. By the time I get to you, this is what I could look like, right? That's kind of where this whole recruiting process is going. I know that was a lot of information for you guys. I kind of boiled it down pretty briefly, but if there's any questions about anything in terms of what we're looking for in a specific pitch, or what else are college coaches looking for, I'll open the floor up for questions now.
I have a lot of guys who don't want to contact people.
Yeah.
What's one way to get over that? I guess they think it's scared. They're scared of these guys. Or I don't know what it is, but Chance has been harping it to them. I've harped it to them.
There's really no way to get recruited now unless you're doing it. And they literally can't go to all these tournaments like before. You have to reach out to them. And trust me, all of them are looking through their Twitter DMs. They're all looking at their email. They are freaking out because they can't recruit like they used to. This is new for them too. So getting them, I think the easiest way is probably to getting especially for pitchers, is getting their data and being like, now we can say like, hey, this is an SEC pitch. This is a Big 12 pitch. This is, junior college pitch, wherever his goals are. And getting him on like Rapsodo and TrackMan and showing him, be like, hey, you should be confident in this. If you go show a college coach, he's going to be interested, right? I think that's one of the biggest parts of this now is people are always afraid of failure and their rejection, right? But now we have data to show you like, hey, you do belong, right? And so I think that's something that they would probably be likely to contact the coach more if they knew that the coach would be impressed with it, right? Besides that, that's the only way they can recruit now. So if you want to get recruited, you got to tell them like they're not going to be at your game next week. They're just not. But you can show them as if they were, right? So that's just going to be getting them over their fear of rejection, and I think that's just a good life lesson in general. So get over their fears of that. And you have one?
Yeah. Is consistency of arm position the most important thing for a young pitcher to work on, instead of trying to get all these different sort of spins or movements on a ball?
I think what you'll find is it really depends on the kid because, I had, who's the lefty, Chance? Really good strike thrower?
McIntyre.
Yeah, McIntyre, he had the most consistent release point I've ever seen. His problem was generating velocity and spin from other things. So it's one of those things that you'll see right away. You don't even need a machine sometimes to see a kid. Sometimes he's here, sometimes he's here. The kids that you can kind of tell, like if you're like, he probably needs to work on that, it's going to be very important for them. If you can see that with the naked eye, you know that it doesn't really matter what else he works on. It's always going to be inconsistent. So even if he spins it well from here, half the time he's up here and here, right? So it's definitely a case-by-case basis, but in terms of amateurs, like that spread I showed you, that big leaguer, for an amateur would be way bigger. And I think that's a great place to start. Once they become aware of it and they can put a number to a feeling, they can put a number to a video and say, hey, you're at your best right here. It makes them want to do it more, right? Same thing as when they're hitting and they see that line drive hit right there. They're going to be like, oh, I want to be right there, right? So consistent results in terms of amateur is probably the hardest one to get just because their bodies are changing every couple months. They're still learning their bodies and stuff like that. But it's a great place to start. In my opinion, I'd like to start there before messing with kind of anything else just because, like I said, you can spin the ball really well here, not here, or here. So you need to, lock that in, right? And you're going to find that in amateurs as being a big problem.
How do you, I love the knowledge, love the analytics. How do you marry the analytics with the player development, especially when it comes to younger players? So, as we as coaches, if we go out here and we put them on Rapsodo and we get all this feedback, how do you, how would you integrate that with the development aspect? If a parent goes out and puts them on TrackMan, Rapsodo, Hit Tracks, all those things, and they have this treasure trove of information, but they don't have any way to disseminate that and use it. So do you have a kind of a method for the development side of the information?
Yeah, again, it's no different than coaching in the past. I had Chance doesn't know. He was like, I came down a couple weeks ago, and Chance was like, yeah, get in the front of your curveball. Like, you got to get more top spin. And I'm just like, all right. So the kid throws a pitch. He sees all the numbers, and I'm like, yeah, you got to get in your top of your curveball and, get more top spin. He's like, okay, cool, because like he saw it, right? But this is no different than stuff we've been teaching in the past. We just now have another verification point. So it still comes down to, are you a good coach? Are you, what type of information can your player handle? Like a lot of guys I work with, even guys in the big leagues, I will literally not even tell them the number. I'll say, hey, get on more on the side of the ball. I don't say get 230, right? Like I'm literally just like, hey, get behind the baseball. Get the front of the ball, right?
Depending on the kid that you have,
Depending on the
correct?
kid. And that's where this is all still coaching. This is just a tool that allows us to validate what our eyes are seeing. So that's where, when we're integrating the data, it's what is the kid, what can he handle, what is he good at? Some kids are visual learners. I have to see all this stuff, then I go. Some kids are auditory, right? Then same thing with the coaches. If we give them too much information too fast, it's not going to lead to anything, right? This is all numbers, but at the end of the day, it's still, can we get more outs? Can we get more hits? And if your mindset isn't like right with that, then it's probably not going to work, right? So that's kind of where I go. And then, like I said, coaching's an art. If all this was just an algorithm saying do this, this, and this, everybody would do it. There's still weird cases. There's still different arm angles. There's still so many numbers we don't know. So that's what I would say to that in terms of the development side.
I like that, and I like that you use it to guide the coaching process. We as old coaches, we can't be so scared by analytics that we ignore it because we're not doing our players. If our job is really player development, which is what we're supposed to be, right? We're not chasing trophies. If we're scared by analytics, by information, then we're not doing our job for the players. But we also can't be totally analytic driven and forget the art of coaching that specific player.
Yeah, like
So,
I've told
I
Chance,
love
went
that
through
that's
this
what
with
you
me.
want.
It's all stuff that most of you guys already know. It's just putting numbers to the eye test, right?
Yeah, and you can challenge your coaching if you're getting results based on the numbers and not just the eye test, because the eyes lie, right?
Absolutely.
I thought I was teaching one thing one time, and somebody puts it on Rapsodo, and I'm like, I've missed the mark completely with this.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, and I think what Sean had showed me when he came over, and I stumbled onto this a year or so ago. Here's a question for you. How many of your players all have cell phones? Like all of them, right? It's like their most prized possession for the most part that they own. At 12 and above, I would argue most everybody has a cell phone. They know exactly where it is. They know every bell and whistle way better than any of us old guys. But one of the things I stumbled onto about a year ago was, here's the basic premise that I know. If I'm a hitter or I'm a pitcher, there's no perfect swing and there's no perfect delivery. I think that's more than fair to say. There's some efficiencies that we can get better out of our body, and that's our job as coaches. But the biggest thing that if we could try to teach our players is repeat your delivery, repeat your swing. So back to what I was saying is about a year and a half ago, I stumbled into it, and Sean reminded me when he was here the other day. I had the guys go and throw bullpens with each other, but they would slow motion video each one on that player's phone. So if you were throwing, I would take your phone and I would do the slow motion video right over the guy's arm, and I would watch, and you would come back, and then you would throw a pitch. I would hand you your phone, I would hand you my phone, and then I would throw a pitch. Then we would both step off and look over it. And what I found in that is that it's the marrying of the coach speak that we old guys use, get out front, spin rate, feel it snap off your fingertips. Spin rate. It's the same thing. It's two different languages. And so one of the things that Sean reminded me of the other day, we had the sidewinder guy come in, and he's here, and everything's finishing like up and over. Well, any sidewinder guys, low three-quarter guys, ball should be turning over and running arm side. And I'm saying, hey, you're just under the ball. Your middle finger, you're just kind of coming under the ball. And I couldn't articulate the words for him to understand. Well, Sean was there, and he had his camera, so he gets it set up, and lo and behold, that same exact pitch, he sees the guy's hand right at release, somewhat supinated, meaning this way, and his middle finger was kind of getting through early and not staying quote-unquote behind the ball, which is making the ball sail this way. If he stays behind that ball, really feels more index finger pressure, he gets that ball to turn over. Well, as soon as the player saw that and saw his hand, he goes, oh, yeah, I got that. It didn't matter what I said. I wasn't wrong. I was actually right. The numbers were, and we're showing him Rapsodo and axes and all these kind of things, and all he needed to see was a video. And I felt that was very profound, because most of our kids all have this thing in their hand. And the other cool thing, and I know I've started doing it with my daughter, I got a 12, 13-year-old daughter, so she kind of gets to be the guinea pig for me quite a bit. And so one of the things I found myself doing, like they had Arena League yesterday, is I no longer video her at full speed anymore, because I don't care about the sound or anything going on or the really outcome. I'm looking at mechanics. And so I don't want to be, most of you guys are dads, especially the youth age group. And I love my daughter, but I'm a perfectionist, and I want it to be done right. And I think it's the same way for our players. And so one of the things I've started doing was I'll take the slow motion, and I'll hand it to her and say, what do you see? Most of your kids, because you've taught them, you've developed, and you've said, hey, stabilize and swivel the glove side, stay close to your glove side, don't let your glove side fly. They understand what that is, but then when they see it, it's kind of like the old football terms, big eye in the sky doesn't lie. It was one of those things where it allows, so what I'm trying to do now is help us with the experience that I've had with Sean, and he's absolutely exceptional with this, is try to bridge that gap between us old coaches and say, just stay close to your glove side. Or you get the higher end version of, well, stabilize and swivel your glove side and have tension at the distal end of your radial forearm. All of those things I said are the exact same. They literally the exact same. But the players, they don't understand that. But if I show them one video and they're like this, oh yeah, I flew open on that. Well, I just told you that. You didn't see it, but trying to help mirror that. And I think one of the things that I know that I'm going to have to do a better job of moving forward is really trying to use video on the fly, whether that be in-game, maybe having the next day starter. I know at the older age group we have the next day starter. Having them on the side and take an inning of them throwing. And then when they come in, that gives them something to do. Because I know the older age groups, we get so frustrated with like, could you do something instead of talking about this guy's girlfriend or whatever? Or instead of heckling the other team, could you do something productive? Right? And so now, or do the same thing with guys that are hitting. Because I think, like they were talking about before, we all get in the cage and we have one swing. Then we get in the game and it's another. And like, I don't know what I did. Here it is, right? And I think the ability to repeat, both offensively and throwing, and then this stuff is outstanding.